Sure, there are things that are pretty much obvious choices for a Planet Zoo 2, just like dolphins, fish in general, birds, and apparently tree climbing koalas, I guess. But today I want to talk about the impossible wishes I have. 4 to be more precise. Just as impossible as getting my voice back to running after being sick for a while. Anyhow, let's get into it. 4 different impossible wishes for the game. And I will explain why I think they are possible. Like, technically, they're all doable in a way, but I think they're impossible due to several factors. We'll get into that. So, shall we just start with the first one? I guess we should, so let's jump into it. Well, number 1 is ropes or realistic ropes. I don't really have too much good footage for that. I remember there has been a mod for, I believe it was Planet Zoo, but there was kind of a line mod where you could drag certain items and they kind of looked like a rope. But what I really mean is a realistic kind of rope element that you can just draw from one point to the other, and it also physically works like really as if a animal is climbing over it. It just actually rotates and wobbles and goes down. I think the thing is, ropes and climbing is so important for zoos. Like, if you go into whatever zoo in the world, ropes and climbing rigs in general are most likely in a lot of habitats the central element to look at. And they convert so much dynamic into whatever is the habitat, Having an orangutan climbing from one side to the other using the big rope just kind of is impressive, You have that massive body swinging on these ropes, everything is moving, and I just adore that looks of it. The feel, the amount of beauty that is within that movement is kind of also converted by the movement of the rope and seeing the weight distribution to whatever the rope is capable of holding, like how tight the rope is and how much it hangs down and whatnot. I also believe it would be a really cool system to get some really accurate climbing in. We know that in Planet Zoo 1, climbing in general is a bit of a glitchy thing. It's down to many reasons, but it would be cool to just have a couple rope pieces. Just imagine we have a potential system that lets you allow to drag ropes from attach points. You gotta put down an attach point and then you draw the rope from A to B, and the only thing is you need to have a certain amount of space to the left and right and below and up above so they can use it. And then you can choose maybe from 3 to 4 different sizes of a rope or width of a rope or thicknesses, whatever you want to call that. So depending on the animal, then you need a thicker or a thinner rope to make it work. So just as we have the thicker or thinner beams in Planet Zoo 1. I do believe this would be a really cool element that is relatively unseen, and many people, I do agree, but many people will say how unnecessary that is. But I personally think it is so unseen, and it would be adding so much realism to the looks of many habitats, like also for animals that are not really climbing that much. Realistic ropes could be cool, like making hammocks or so for bears and stuff like that would be really cool. It would open a door to a lot more dynamic behavior of a habitat, which is one of my bigger criticisms in Planet Zoo 1. By the way, little spoiler, I have a series planned in the next week of Planet Zoo 2 videos upcoming, and also a Planet Zoo 1 review video. In case you are interested, make sure to sub to the channel right now so you don't miss out on them. There's a lot of stuff coming. I've planned out a lot of videos coming up next couple of weeks, and because of YouTube being very bad at pushing videos to you guys right now, you better enable the little bell and stuff on my channel as well. Anyhow, ropes for me personally would be a really cool thing. However, I do think this is impossible because there are so many other things that are way more important than this, even though technically I believe it's one of the more simple things to integrate in the game. But I don't think Frontier is prioritizing this one over all the many other fixes and improvements they want to do. However, I kept that as first in my list. It's not as cool as the 4th one, but you'll see why. However, first of all, let's go to the second one next. And this is realistic animal behavior implementation. That sounds awfully complicated, I know. However, I do think this is a vital part. Now, don't get me wrong. In the first game, Frontier has done a magnificent job, and I believe this is the core improvement over many prior games that haven't had this thing. The way how animals behaved in the game was really cool, but it did lack in specific cases, Even though the AI was kind of cool already of, exploring each habitat individually. Whenever you change the habitat, they went for getting new traversable areas and try to go for new edges and to corners and whatnot. But truthfully, it became super repetitive after a time, unless you didn't change many things in your habitat. And to be fair, even though they had a lot of potential ways to walk, due to the fact how food, water, and all the other needs work and how short the time in between refilling these needs is, the route they are taking is 99% of the time the same. So even though it is a dynamic system, you don't really get a dynamic behavior in the habitat unless you kind of engineer that, which I've done plenty of time and other people do as well by putting certain, items in that block certain ways so that animal have to choose different paths according to which kind of enrichment item they go to. I think this shall not be the case anymore. It needs to be a lot more natural. So that means the AI in the game for the animals specifically needs to be a lot more randomized. It needs to be a bit more explorative. It needs to be a bit more about finding out new corners in the habitat that you haven't been to for a couple, in-game minutes, I should say. So that it's not boring to look at a habitat. You don't expect the animal to always walk the same way. However, this could be, and I know it's a bit of a controversial thing over here, but this could be an element of the game. So the more repetitive a certain pattern becomes, this could be a sign for your animal to be a little bit annoyed or bored, which needs more enrichment or change of the habitat. So it could become also a bit of a gameplay feature, because to be honest, in the first game also, the things like herding or shelter search or seeking for shelters or whatnot, even though it was in the game and meant to be in the game, does not really work that well. So you've got rain and you've got cover from rain, but do the animals really use it? Well, not really that much. You got heat and shadow, but do they really use the shade to go from the shadow? Not really though, and the same goes for the winter. They still are outside plenty of times despite the fact they don't like the cold, and then they're annoyed because they're in the cold, even though they have a place to be. So it's been there, but it's not fledged out. And I really loved to see this in the second game. However, I really don't think it's going that far, because for me personally, it's not only about the things I said. Let's add another factor to it to make it really impossible, because I think with the AI improvement, we also need an improvement in the animation. I need to go a little more deeper into how the animation system works. I have done a full video on the traversable area and how that works, so in case this is interesting for you, you can check that out on my channel. But just to keep it rather simple for those of you who don't know, an animal in the game contains of obviously the body and all its body parts. You got the body, you got the arms, legs, paws, whatever the animal is, tail, whatnot. And within that kind of body, you got a rig. The rig is made out of several bones, let's say a lower leg bone, the kind of feet bone, even fingers, or claws or whatever can be a bone. And by bone, I mean actually a movable part within the 3D animated rig. And all these individual things can be animated. So what then has been done is these rigs, and that was one of the big breakthroughs, by the way, of Planet Zoo, these rigs were actually exchangeable. You could use the tiger rig and put the tiger rig on a lion rig, which is a huge advantage because it makes it so much faster to adjust certain things rather than completely redevelop the whole rig. That means you got a big cat and another big cat, and then you just need to adjust certain elements of the walk animation to make it more look like a lion versus a tiger, which is great. And don't get me wrong, that has already been pretty advanced for the time. And then obviously Frontier has done a whole bunch of sets for the animations. You got running, you got idle, you got sleeping, you got lying, you got jumping, you got standing up, you're standing down, crouching, whatnot. You can imagine climbing, and you got all the transitions between the different animations, some of which are working automatically because it then just automatically transitions from one animation into the other, but most likely that always works with different checkpoints. These checkpoints can be various things, can be an incline on the map, can be a set piece in the game that is a climbable piece, for example, and it can also be an enrichment item. So as soon as the animal is in the reach of the enrichment item, the animation that is dedicated to the enrichment item will be playing and the animal transitions over. However, this is still pretty visible in the game if you look at it. So you can clearly tell when there is an animal going to an enrichment item and then it transitions over. In very few occasions, it looks superbly flawless. If it just really comes into the perfect angle, you almost cannot see the transition. But in many other cases, you can. And I believe with the power of AI, with the power of new systems, and this is where my knowledge kind of ends, but as far as I know from what I've seen on various kind of engines lately, whether it's been Unreal or whatever, you can really tell. Also on Blender, there are a couple of things on Houdini that work this way. There's a whole set of new AI that kind of calculates a certain amount of animations based on your base animation to fill the gaps in certain areas. So that means if we have, for example, a climbable item and we've got a second climbable item, and between those climbable items there is maybe no connection, or there is a wrong angle for the animation to play, let's say, so that the game technically would say, okay, I can't walk straight over here. And this is where you get all the glitches in the game, by the way. If you see certain times like that the tiger wobbles to the left, to the right, and then always goes, this is because there is no logical path for the animation to play between those two items, which is a very technical thing, but it obviously is super annoying for the eye. And I would hope that with the new system you could kind of get rid of these glitches, because the AI or an AI system, or let's say an algorithm, it doesn't always need to be AI in that specific sense, but a technical solution would overcome this gap and multiply the amount of animations you have in the game. So that would also eliminate all the repetitiveness in these animations, because as much as I would say the animations that Frontier did are amongst the best you can have on the market for any animal, it doesn't matter if it's a simulation game or other game, the animations are fantastic. But again, if you look at the game for longer, and I've played a couple thousand hours in the game, they get pretty repetitive, and you don't need 1,000 hours for that. So I would love to see that. And for the length of this point, you can see how important that would be to me. I would absolutely love this to be a thing. So if I need to choose from all the different impossible things I'm going to talk about today, this may be the point I would prioritize, even though it's not as cool as the last one, as I said. However, let's go to number 3 now. And that is actual seasons. Now, hear me out. In Planet Coaster 2, you would argue there are no actual seasons, and you would even argue that in Planet Zoo the weather is actually even better, right? Yes, I would agree too, but both of the games don't really have actual seasons in the way I mean that. And you can see one picture on the screen, but now let's turn that picture into the 4 seasons. You can see the 4 seasons now on screen. And disclaimer, yes, they have been AI edited, because I cannot do this in Photoshop because I'm too stupid and too dumb for that. But for the showcase, this is actually pretty perfect, because it showcases exactly what I want to talk about. I am talking about real seasons with real impact to the game, and not only on a management basis, but also on a visual basis. Hear me out. I know this is pretty impossible, and if I need to choose one of the 4 here that is absolutely not going to be in the game, it's going to be this one. I think this is the most impossible one of all the 4. And it's going to be hilarious, because you would maybe think the other one, especially number 4, is even more impossible. But no, this one I believe is the most impossible one, because it has so many things in it that you would argue is not important for the game. I personally disagree. I think it's super important, which is why I choose it. Now, let's stop talking all the fuzz. Let's get into it. I think having a change of leaves and trees and the, how they look and behave per season would open up a completely new management layer. Also, it would simplify our browser for pieces and stuff like that quite dramatically. Because imagine having just one oak tree, for example, and have a scaling option, a advanced scaling option, let's say. You only need an oak tree. You've got one oak tree, you can scale it from a small to a big oak tree, and then you have got 4 different seasonal states in which it can be. It can be a dead tree, let's call it dead tree for the sake of it. It would be a winter tree, but it could be the dead state. You got a dead tree if you want it, and then you can lock it to the state. As always in the game, you could override the season thing, because apparently also for Sandbox you would need that. So you would set that tree to winter, and it's going to be always and always without any kind of leaf. In spring, obviously, it's going to look like a spring tree with a couple of blooming flowers, if it has any in the realistic kind of approach, or some very bright green leaves, a smaller leaf, whatever the case. In autumn and the high summer, it basically looks like the game looks. And then in autumn, it obviously starts to look very autumny by like having orange, red, and all these kind of wonderful, colorful things. Not only visually, that would be fantastic to look at, but it would also give you a visual connection to which season you are in. It would make the game, playing the game, feel more dynamic. It would give you a connection to what kind of weather you can expect and what type of things. It would also give you a bit of an idea to which biome you are in, because apparently these things would only be necessary in certain biomes, because in a tropical region you'd never have the dead tree kind of appeal, because you'll never have winter of that sense, but you can have it more rainy or whatever. So I think, even though this is seen a lot from the kind of temperate region, because either in full Arctic or in full tropical you don't really have that much change, but in a lot of other spaces and places you do have active seasons. But also with the seasons would come a new management layer. So let's say for maintenance personnel or staff, you would need to have actual gardening care. And before you go crazy, like, what the hell are you talking about? Whatever. We already had that. We already had that in Zoo Tycoon and in in Roller Coaster Tycoon, where we had all the maintenance workers, staff members, do certain care for lawn, and they had to water the flowers, for example. Would I need to have it that intricate? Potentially not, but having it set a region that needs to be kind of watered, and also have a water management going on, because see, this is one of the things we never had in the game, and a zoo most likely is one of the biggest consumer of water overall, or should I say waster or abuser, I guess, at this point, because oh boy do they consume a whole bunch of water, and how important that is to restore the water and make good use of the water. And that equally goes for the usage of plants. So you need to maintain the amount of plants you have in your habitats, and let's say, but also with the seasons, that would give you a different challenge of how much water you need and it could be very nice layer of an added management, but you could automate that very easily by having enough staff or personnel dedicated to these jobs. But it would also give a whole bunch more meaning to certain staff members, opposed to just cleaning your pathways. They would now become actual jobs, or actual kind of pieces of the puzzle to make your zoo work. I genuinely think this would be absolutely cool as a general thing for the game, and a big improvement. And also it goes so far to have, different looks of your habitat. So in winter, you would have much less shelter or much less privacy shelter for animals. You need to think about that as well, because certain trees lose their leaves in winter times, which you would technically need to account for, or actually take into account while building your habitat. How cool would that be if you build a habitat in spring and you don't yet know how it's gonna look in full bloom? You don't know how it looks in autumn, for example. I mean, it's already cool to just click on winter and snow and see how your habitat transitions, but also specifically with the pictures on screen, you can really nicely tell how much of a difference the winter makes in comparison to summer or autumn. With the amount of leaves gone, it's all so much more open and windy, for example, as well. You could make it more chilly by that. I don't know. There's like so much potential in having actual seasons. I could go on forever, because it also could impact the way how you plan out your zoo entirely. It could also impact how you build your habitats. It will be able to impact the choices for animals you have, because certain plants then potentially couldn't even grow in your biome. That would be a thing that we could also implement with that. And again, it would dramatically reduce the amount of items per, let's say, foliage piece you would need. I would love to see that, but do I really need to explain why I think this is impossible? I mean, see, technically, and this is the fun part here, if you just look at the amount of work necessary, and I'm just purely speaking from a 3D and art point, okay? The amount of work would be equally, or let's kind of try to put it on the current system. At the moment, we do have 3 to 4 items per foliage piece. Let's take a flower. We got a small, a medium, and a big version, and sometimes we even have a blooming and a non-blooming version. For trees, I think we even have 4 of them. We've got a sapling, we've got small, medium, and large. Now, considering you would have a scaling option that goes as far to make it from sapling to large size individually, and then have maybe a randomizer in the tree itself. This could mean that you still need 4 items, or 4 different designs per item. However, these 4 will be 4 seasons. And frankly honest, the winter one isn't an additional work. You just get rid of the leaves, I guess. So See, I guess even from the work standpoint, that would not be too much. But all the implication it's going to bring, and to make it really a fully working system, you obviously would need to change a lot more than just the different artworks for that. However, it's time now to go to the most coolest of them. Again, maybe not the most, impossible one. Still very impossible, though. Let's move on. Okay, so don't shoot me, don't hate me, but I'm talking about realistic flowing water. Yes, I'm speaking of top-level, top-notch water simulation. And I stand by that. I think if I would need to choose the coolest of them all, I've said that many times in the video, so you know it already, it's gonna be this. I already said in the season part that I believe water is such an overlooked and so massive thing in zoos that this could be one of the absolute game changers in a more positive way. Considering we would be getting full aquatics in this game. I mean, hinted by with the survey, hinted by with many things. Couldn't it be also more obvious how important that would be? Adding a full water simulation. I'm not talking about volumetric water. We have that in Planet Coaster 2 for whatever weird reason. We have that. It just doesn't make any sense to have it in there. But we do have it. It's just there, I guess. However, imagine having this, and I got a couple of images from different YouTube videos simulating full flow water in Blender or in Unreal, whatever. So it is possible. Most of the 3D programs now have a very automatic system for that, adding a water source and then have realistically made water. This would be so freaking insane. Imagine how cool habitat water features could be. And if I said at the beginning that climbing frames are super important for the looks of habitats, they will be put to shame when we talk about water features. Water features in zoos are the absolute show master. They are the most important thing. You have ditches, you've got water to separate habitats from each other. You have got lakes, but you've also flowing water. You've got slides for like otters and stuff. You've got different types of waterfalls in many habitats. Also, you need water to cool certain areas, specifically in hotter regions. Remember the Valencia Zoo, which uses water in a very clever way to play with temperature, specifically in the elephant habitat. They have a lot of waterfall features to make this as a usage for cooling down the area. Like it is everywhere, it's omnipresent, it's everywhere. Water is one of the most important things in these zoo areas, and water has been neglected for the most part. It's been super clunky to work with in the first game, and we found our ways due to mods and abusing areas and using tricks and tunneling and whatever to create certain areas. But also, it would be so helpful to create underwater areas. It would be so helpful to create some creeks and waterfalls and stuff. And seeing how waterfalls in Jurassic World Evolution 3 have really sparked the interest of a lot of people, and being potentially number one feature people want from Jurassic World Evolution 3 in Planet Zoo 2, well, I guess that's that. But if we talk about these things, as I said, impossible, I want to have this as a full integration. We can set, I really want to have it as, imagine as the actual VFX effect we have right now. Imagine we have a water source that we can set somewhere, and water would start flowing. We can set the amount of water flow, we can set the amount of water that can get from there. But also imagine that being a thing, it could immediately add up to the management. So you decide how much water you want to have pop out of this water flow system. So this would be the amount of water you need to have. Either you have this already in your zoo with a lake or a reservoir or whatnot, or you need to purchase that from the local authorities, or you can also put a cap on that. Like say your zoo can only use that amount of water per month, let's say. So it will also change how much of a push through you would have with the water. That would be really cool. And also the reuse of water, have a full flow of water. That would be so cool. And imagine that being a thing. You can build your own creek, and then water would be flowing through that creek, and you really would need to build it in a way so that water is contained in the middle and not goes. I mean, I think I would just be using this game as a water creek simulator, I guess, at this point. But no, honestly, I would be madly in love with the fact of having this. It would be ridiculously great to have that in the game. I think it would create some of the most beautiful environments, and knowing how beautiful Planet Zoo already looks, and hopefully they are just improving that and we don't have another Planet Coaster 2 situation. I really do. They build upon the great graphics of Planet Zoo and just add a couple of the new technologies into it. I absolutely would love to see this. Full flow water. I already love the mods in Minecraft that improved this dramatically. It just looked already so much crazier in that game. But imagine this in a game like so. And also, imagine the water being a water source also for your animals to drink from. And we can finally get rid of this ominous, weird-looking water fountain piece in the game that no one actually likes and it's always hidden and weird, whatever. Yeah, but no, I absolutely think this would be fantastic to have, but as fantastic as it would be, as impossible I think it is. Anyways, let's wrap it up because it should be long enough for just 4 impossible wishes, right? Okay, first things first, sorry for my voice. I'm gonna try the best to re-edit the audio to not make it sound super nosy, but I'm feeling good, but that little cold hasn't done too much harm to me, but my voice, oh boy. Anyhow, that's not the topic. Ropes, real AI, real animal AI I should say, seasons, and realistic water flow. These are the 4 impossible wishes I have for the game. And let me just take that conclusion, or whatever you want to call that last part of the video, to again say why I think these are impossible. I don't think that any of the wishes is something ridiculously unnecessary. I think all of them would have their super good spot in the game. But I think there are just a lot more important things to be fixed and a lot more important things that people actually want to see. None of these over here would be deal breakers, and that is always a very important bit to a wish. So personally, I would say that having actual birds and full aquatics are deal breakers. That is a full must, or the amount of animals in the game. We'll get to this in dedicated videos. But these 4 things, would we be able to live with the ropes in the game as they were with just improved climbing? Of course we would, you know. Would we survive with a just merely improved AI that just has fewer glitches and uses the habitat a bit better and still has amazing animations, just a couple more, but not full AI? I mean, of course, it would be still great. Maybe not as great as it could be, but it's still pretty great. The same goes for seasons. Like, do we need actual seasons, or can we get away with like having 3 or 4 different types of trees and just decide ourselves what kind of season we want to be in? Fine, you know. And last but not least, if we would just get a bit more better VFX for like waterfalls and volumetric water for have actually diving animals in there too, well, that would be good too, right? So these things would still work in the game, would satisfy the majority of people, but yet I think if any of those 4 things comes into game, they could be really that little bit, the icing on the cake, that little bit the cherry on top that makes a good game, a good successor, a great successor, a standout feature, you know, a feature that no one would have expected. I think sometimes games need that one little thing that no one really has expected them to do. I think this is generally one of the most overseen features of a game that makes you go like, oh boy, they really did that. For me personally, in Planet Zoo 1, that was the fact that animals can actually climb on every piece you build yourself. For me personally, that was when we've been to the offices 2019, beginning of the year, and they showed us the first beta of the game. And they built that climbing rig, and I was like, wow, they're building that out of pieces. What's going to happen now? Is that just cosmetic? And then all of a sudden, the chimpanzees were like climbing up there. And to be fair, in that first demo, that looked almost perfectly fine. And we all were like, what the heck is just happening? And then they were just like adding more beams to it, and they were all of a sudden using these beams. That was mind-blowing, and I believe all the comments back in the day were really going nuts about the feature. I remember when I had my first video on it, where I had these mandrills climbing on various things I put down, and then I just put down a new connection between 2 areas of the habitat, and they were just able to climb over. People lost their minds in chat, I remember that. And so this type of standout feature, when no one would have really expected them to do this, would be one of these 4 for me personally. And honestly, I would be going nuts again in 2026. So that's the time for you to jump into the comment section and tell me what would be your standout feature. If it is one of these 4, well, great, let me know which one. But if it's another one, let me know down below. I'm very curious to read, and I'm sure Frontier is going to be curious as well to read. Other than that, if you would do me a favor and hype the video, if you have some hypes left, that would help the algorithm to finally use the pay-to-win mechanism that no one likes on this platform anymore. But, well, that's the case. I have to do this. It's the same like subscribe to the channel, blah, blah, blah. All the stuff I never wanted to do, but unfortunately I figured if I don't do it, no one would actually act. So, well, yeah, I did that, you know, all that kind of YouTube thing, blah, blah, blah. Subscribe, hit the like, do this, you get the drill, okay? Whatever. I'm just very thankful you just held it out till this point with me and with my wife? No, my wife still belongs to me. With my voice, I guess. Okay, end the video. It's not gonna be getting any better, okay? So see you next time. Bye!